Hey, fellow GNTers, those of us who like our spirituality with a twist. So, we're doing a special episode on our first Gin and Tantra retreat coming up in March of 2025. And we wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about our retreat philosophy and the kind of things we had in mind doing this. And that's the goal of this episode.
Yeah. Well, and
All
retreat
about that. Uh-huh.
and retreats in general also. I mean, I don't think
Yeah.
we've talked about that too much. So, and for most people that I know, haven't been on a retreat of any type, really. So,
Mhm.
I think we can just kind of,
Oh, you
talk
want to
touch
give
on.
like the general context of that too. Yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds like a good plan.
Yeah.
So Daniel and I kind of each kind of brainstormed this thing out, kind of thinking about what we wanted to say. And I had kind of the idea of like kind of big picture goals and then, some of the details of some of the stuff that we'll specifically try to work on in the meditations. And Daniel has his own list of things. So we'll just kind of kick this around and then that will be this episode.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
give everybody what they need to know about this. All right. Yeah, I think it's something that, this is our first one, but it kind of was an inevitable thing for us to do. I think all the time that we've been doing this, it's been like, okay, eventually this
Yeah.
will be the next thing to make this available for people too.
Yes.
Um, and so as I was thinking about this, I thought, well, we like to be a little personal here. So for me, I started thinking about it and I went, okay, I'm really interested in like what it means to have almost like the tantric personality, as the great Tibetan teacher Lama Yeshe might say, or like a little bit more of a tantric life or something, right? And helping people to kind of get more to that space. And if I go back to the very first retreats that I did, which were like doing Zen things back in the day, just how transformative that was for me. And the idea that I want to be able to kind of share that with other people. And I think I've wanted to do that really ever since I got into this whole thing. It just took a while to feel like, you had the experiences that you want to share. And now we have this project, so it's a perfect vehicle for that. I know when I went back to my first Zen experiences going on these retreats, I wanted to somehow change my life for the better. I definitely had that idea, right? And that meant like a lot of different things I wanted to change, and then having the retreat thing and getting deeper engaged and these kind of practices being this kind of transformative thing for me. And I can certainly say that's one of the best things I've ever done with my whole life. So when we get to the personal and the emotional part, as we like to do on GNT, I mean, that's definitely part of how I feel about this idea of wanting to help people change things, right?
Well,
When we
let's
say,
before we
yeah,
go
go
there,
ahead.
Eric. Well, I mean, we really should say what a retreat because I don't know that the audience knows what a retreat is.
Well, if you want to go to that level, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, no, we have. I mean, because I mean, I don't want to talk over people's heads. You know what I'm saying? And
Well, I don't know what constitutes over people heads on that, but okay, go ahead. Yeah,
well,
shoot.
yeah, well, I mean, I could say, I mean, my friends are all relatively spiritually minded people, and until I started hosting stuff, most people had never been on a retreat. You know?
Okay, so go ahead. We'll do your thing, man.
Yeah. So I mean, so what? Right. So what is a retreat? Right. A retreat is kind of an immersion. A retreat, but what are you retreating from? You're retreating from mundane reality, right? You're
Mhm.
moving outside of your normal waking state, problem solving consciousness involving whatever your life is involving, including your practice, and you're retreating to a different, usually a different location, but definitely a different mind state where you sort of, I don't know, you flip your priorities actually. Your priorities move away from life and mundane concepts and being to that of your primary focus is your practice or is reading or is yoga or whatever it is that you want to focus on. That's your primary source of input for your attention and your focus and your time and all of this, right? And so in this way, as you're talking about like your retreats, that those are the times in which that you dedicated yourself to the practice. You dedicated yourself to the practice basically all day, either learning about it or practicing it in usually in tandem. Usually you do some learning and then some practicing. And so we had wanted to present this like an immersion, if you will, or a retreat as sort of an outpouring of our as both of our enjoyments for being on retreat for going on and off a retreat for so many years. So it's like this is like the little mini version of being a sort of in a monastery setting, so to speak, right? You sort of, follow not so many rules like you can't talk to other people or whatever, but you're solely focused on your practice. You're solely focused on learning and absorbing whatever it is that it has to give you, and it puts you, at least for me, it puts you in a different kind of state. So you're talking about like tantric personality, right? In that you are weaving the deeper parts of yourself to the more, I guess I could say, superficial parts of yourself in hopes to create it, like you said, to create a change. And so when you spend time on a retreat, you are stoking that alchemical fire that is making the change. These are the, at least for me, these are the points in your life in which you say, this is what is priority for me, and I'm going to take the time to do that. And which means that you have to leave kind of everything else that you normally tend to, on the side and focus on whatever it is that you're wanting to focus on. And for us, it's been, meditation of and various sort of Buddhist teachings over the last, however many years.
I think the thing that I was trying to get to was this idea like, what's the motivations for doing this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think when I first started doing this, I didn't know what the hell I was getting into,
Yeah.
you know? Uh, I mean, I think I had a general sense of what a retreat was. I mean, you go away and you kind of like take a step out of your normal life. You're in some kind of more, you're kind of going into like, you're stepping away for some moment, just spending some time, to work on this particular thing. I had a general sense of what that meant. You know, uh, I think there is a kind of a general sense, but I think I had something where like, what was the thing that drives you to want to do those things, right? And I
Hmm.
don't know how you felt about this, but for me, it was like I wanted to change something in myself, right? And it was coming from this motivation of wanting to do that, and then stepping into something like that's a new experience if you've never done it before, for sure, and it's transformative, but driven by like sort of those motivations. So yeah, so you kind of like go to the point of view of like, okay, what is a retreat? You talked about it, right? And then, what are the things that drive people to want to do these things, right?
Yeah.
And I know for what we're trying to do, I think it's just kind of create, you said like kind of like you transcend sort of your everyday things,
Yeah.
right? You transcend sort of like, let's step away from the everyday world for a little bit. Well, let's do something different. Let's step out of that and work on something different with ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Some different parts of ourselves. So we step away to do that. And I think like as far as what we've been trying to do as a project is this is really, I think, trying to challenge, one's ideas of what life is or what life can be, right? And imagine that it could be like something different or something more or something better, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's like, yeah, I think that's kind of like the underlying drive of, what we've been trying to do. And then doing this special thing where let's all step out, in some group together where we all work on things to help accomplish this transformative activity, right?
Hmm.
That's the retreat, right? I
Hmm.
don't know. I mean, I think for what we're trying to do, I don't even know if it's monastic or not monastic or anything. We're just trying to get people into a space where we can present things that they can work on in themselves that can help them transform themselves in their lives,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, yeah, I think that's like the feeling. Yep.
Yeah. And you're also like, you're steeped in it. Because when you're in your normal life, like you might have like, so right, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, right? When you're on
Mhm.
retreat, everybody there is in your Sangha because everybody there is coming to learn. It's very clear, I mean, they might have individual intentions as to why they're there, but they're there to learn as part of it. And when you're in life, you're in the stew. Everybody's doing different things. You might share some things with your friends or family members or lovers or whatever, and you talk about it and you get into it with them. But for the most part, it comes and goes as as everything does. But when you're in retreat, there everybody is there for the same purpose, and so the conversations are a little bit deeper because you already have. There's so much that you share. There's deep intrinsic aspects of yourself that you share with people because of the fact that you're both there learning that specific thing. You might not agree on everything. I mean, not everybody on retreat's going to be your best friend for life, for sure not. But I don't know, there's an unspoken shared passion, and it's probably bodhicitta, right? Like like this desire, right? There's this deep desire to
It's
grow, to
mind that
change.
seeks to like improve yourself or seeks to enlighten yourself and to help other people do the same, right? That's the
Yeah.
bodhicitta idea.
Yeah, and you
Yeah.
share that. And my guess is that we share that with people there and you can feel it. You know what it is.
I feel like, when I first started doing these things, it was very moving to realize there's other people here who are strongly motivated to do this too,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
you and I did kind of one sort of a more official Orthodox kind of like Buddhist tantric retreat, right? within the year. And I had the same experience of being there, being like, okay, we're all up in Canada together and we all want to do this. And there's people here who really have that same desire to transform themselves in some
Yes.
positive way, right? And
Yes.
share that experience with others. I mean, how fucking awesome is that? It's like one of the best times you're ever going to have,
Yeah.
you know? So, so that was thinking, well, you know, what kind of things are you trying to change about
Mm.
yourself, or what kind of things are you working on? And I think we all might be bringing different things in. It does occur to me, like, the lead thing that popped in my head was a lot of times you're just working on yourself. You want to understand your own psychology better. You want
Sure.
to understand your own mind better, you know, and the retreat, to go into a retreat space can help you do that, right? I'm working on some aspect of my own psychology, my own personal understanding. I think that's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think there's another part where you can go and you can just understand, like, in a deeper way, what the nature of a person is, you know, like it's an exploration not only of like your own personal identity, like who's Eric,
Right.
but in a deeper way, it really ends up. And I think I had those motivations when I was going in. I wanted to understand myself better,
Right.
but it got to be something like, well, now I'm really going to try to understand also, like, what does it mean to be a person in a kind of a more deep way, right? And trying to understand the multiple layers that like make up a person. And that's a
Yeah.
big deal in sort of certainly what we want to do in terms of, the podcast, but also like the Buddhist tantric kind of thing we're trying to do for this retreat itself, right?
Yeah.
That it like really gets you to explore, like, okay, what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be a living thing and all the different layers that make up a person, right?
Yeah.
Understand that, like, okay, I got my physical body. I want to understand that better. I want to understand my emotions better. I want to understand, you know, my patterns of thought better. I want to understand my deeper drives, goals, and motivations better. I want to understand what it means to, like, you know, even have a mind
Right.
and to have a spirit. Like, let's say
Right.
we open the door to that too. There's more to us than just this body on this mortal coil, right? And like,
Hmm.
it's wild, but like you do get to those things, right? So you can
Yeah.
understand your own personal identity better. Okay, this is who Eric is, more, or Daniel, or fill in your own name. But it's also a
Hmm.
thing of like, wow, I get to understand what it means to be a person overall. And I think, the thing that we're trying to do in these Buddhist tantras help you try to do that.
Yeah.
Help me understand what it means to be a living thing, to be alive, right?
Yeah.
So, to like what the nature is. I jot down the things that popped out to me with this, but what's the nature of my body? What's the nature of my mind? How do those two things interconnect with one another, right?
Yeah.
You start to learn and understand what you think that is, right? You get to share that with people, right? And other people who are equally curious as you
Hmm.
to understand that as well, right? And I was, for me, I had like health issues when I was younger. And I had questions even about, like, times in my teens, my own mortality. And so I was like, okay, what does it mean to be a living thing in that sense too? If you've gone through illness, or if you've gone through serious things in your life, it gives you a better sense of what it means to be alive. And it tries to explore, what life and death are about. If you get to the most serious things in life, you can start
Right.
changing your attitude about what you think that means, right?
Yeah.
Because if you start tapping into deeper parts of yourself, you start to realize, oh, well, maybe there's more to me than I thought there was.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a part of me that even transcends like this life or something. Oh shit, I had no idea. Now I have a sense of it, right?
Hmm.
You can start to feel those kinds of like deeper questions with that, right?
Hmm.
And because we're doing, I think, specifically stuff that's in the tantras, right? Well, then you could start thinking about, well, maybe I want to challenge or expand what I think sexuality means, right? Or
Hmm.
then what I think love means, or what I think relationship means, because the tantras are trying to help you do that too.
Yeah.
And learn how to challenge those ideas. Like, what are the possibilities of that? Maybe there's more possibilities in that than I even thought. Maybe these things are even, they're deep things anyways, but maybe they're even deeper than what I even thought. And I think you
Hmm.
get into start doing some of these practices, and they start kind of asking you those questions, right? Proposing those questions to you, and also giving you tools to help explore that, what those
Yeah.
answers might be. So you start doing some of this stuff, and you start thinking, oh, wait a minute, there's deeper aspects to sexuality or love or relationship, or what I think the body means, and what I think the mind means, or what I think maybe even constitutes spirit. All of a sudden, it's proposing all of those kinds of questions and gives you a chance to explore those things.
It also gives you an opportunity to have an experience,
Yeah.
a deep experience. And not to say that that can't happen in normal life, but we're just so routinized to do what we're doing on a, daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis, that it does take a special strike, at the on the ore with the hammer to create enough sparks to do something on a regular basis, that can be transformative in that way. But when you give yourself the opportunity to, and you kind of like you're intentionally trying to cultivate something to do that, right? To challenge a belief, or to open a new perspective, or to ask a deeper question or get a different answer. These are the ways in which that I believe, even if it doesn't occur while you're there, the doors begin to open, and it becomes an act of your life, actually. It's not something, it's like how people take vacation. If I'm choosing, I prefer to go on retreat, to be honest. It's actually more restorative than a vacation, in my opinion. I mean,
Well, it's
vacations
kind of
are
like a spiritual vacation or something, right?
yeah, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Because you're learning, and and the goal is to improve. But it's, I mean, and I also want to say, it's not improvement because you're not accepting of yourself in the process. It's not. I mean, like your computer, I know we like to do this, the a hardware software thing, but like your computer works fine right now, but yet there's always updates to it to improve small things and whatever. So like in this case, your mind is developing, but then you bring up a good point. It's like, well, then you become curious about things. You start asking
Mhm.
questions that are outside of the norm. Well, where do you go to find those answers? Even if you're not necessarily like looking, you're not like looking for them online. You're not like, how can I love differently? It's not a thing you're going to type in Google. I mean, I guess you could ask Chat GPT, but my guess is that the answer is not going to be as satisfactory as if you were to discover it yourself. Because
You'll just get a
ultimately,
bunch of stuff about sex toys and stuff.
right. And
ChatGPT do that?
ultimately, whose voice do we trust the most in life? Our own.
Yeah, yeah.
So when you hear your own voice tell you something that you want to know, you're like, "Oh, look at me. I'm right again." You know what I'm saying? Like it's
That's a good point for me to
yeah.
me.
Wow. Have others been listening to me as much as I have? My God.
Yeah, maybe they should be. Okay, so like full disclosure on this, when Daniel and I do an episode of this type, we were like, okay, we know we're both have things that we want to talk about, right? And so for you, I think the thing you wanted to make the most point about was like, this is a time to step out
Yeah.
of like the everyday for a bit. Get away
Yes.
from it.
Yeah.
Feel what that feels like
Yeah.
to step away from this and give you the space, to go through and have that experience, right? And then also you're making the point that, well, you get to do that with a bunch of other people who are hyped up to do the same thing.
Yes.
And then you can bond. And then there's people where you might make friendships of this type that will carry you through and be a big part of your life. That's certainly possible, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
But even if it's not, it's still people from that moment in time who will make an impact on you,
Yes.
right? And you'll share like this thing and you become kind of bonded in this kind of special way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I was also thinking about like, well, why do this? Like, why do you want to do it? And why do we want to share this? And like, so that's like, okay, these are the kind of things that motivate you. There's some part of you that says, I want to like, I want to try to like make myself better, or I want to try to like address some part of myself that I want to explore more,
Yeah.
or, all the motivations that do this. And like, I think my answer to that is like, when you get on that kind of questioning and when you start to like take those kinds of steps, you'll get some answers.
Yes.
Some stuff will happen and you'll change,
Yeah.
right? And like I think, for what we're doing as far as this little podcast project for us and now these other little offshoots that we're working on is to like help people make that as concrete as fucking possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Make it real, then you'll be able to kind of have, you're mentioning the experiences of it, right? The kind of
Yeah.
transformative experiences, and then you can start to cake it out into your life. That would be a kind of a goal, I think. I know for me, I'm sure for you too, to like help people build something that then you can go and start taking that out and carry that out into your life outside too.
Yeah.
You start building up like a routine for yourself over the course of the retreat, and you're like, okay, I have a routine that's starting to get built.
Yes.
Okay, I might not be able to like spend this amount of time, but that's what happens. You take time away, you work on something for yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then when you
Yeah.
go back to your life with its demands and whatever, but you could still carve out that space for something that you've already sort of started to build for
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because you've
Yeah.
taken the time to practice it,
We're
you know?
planting, you're planting seeds. Or
Yeah.
and if the seeds have been planted, then you are cultivating your garden.
And then hopefully in a way that's concrete enough where it's like, okay, I know what my routine is going to be. I'm going to do this and then this and this, and I'll try to carry that out in my life and I'll continue it on.
Yes,
So I rehearsed that when I was on this retreat. So now I've kind of built that momentum going, right?
I have been telling people that you, for those who will attend, you will not need another meditative practice. You won't necessarily need one for the rest of your life. So, um, you might pick other ones up, but you won't have to do one. You can work with this, you know?
Or at least the goal would be to set you at something that if it vibes with you, you will be able to do that, right? We're
Yeah.
gonna give you something that's complete enough that it, it's
Yes.
gonna get you going.
Yes.
And even if you decide, okay, I'm gonna add some other things into it, rock on, do it,
That's cool.
right? But it'll be complete enough on its own to be a
Yes.
thing, you
Yes.
know? Yeah, yeah, that's the goal of it.
Yeah, that is definitely the goal for sure. And should we talk a little bit about what we're,
Yeah, so for me, you know, I frame this in terms of like, again, like the tantric path or something, right?
yeah.
Where there's kind of like two steps in it, and we'll try to give you things that relate back to both of these steps. One of the steps is what they call a generation stage, where you kind of meditate on uh, the different layers of who you are, right? Again, your body, your emotions, your thoughts, your deeper drives, the deeper parts of your own mind, right?
Yeah.
All the way, hopefully, back to some experience that has to do with like the core of who you are. You see that you hear this word like Buddha nature a lot, or in Taoism, they like to say original Shen, right? The deepest part of a person. And you get to explore that. And then they also do this thing where you try to imagine yourself uh, the enlightened part of who you are. You try to tap into that inside, right? And you can kind of like debate what this means. It's either the potential for yourself, to kind of be the more fully realized, enlightened version of you, or you can say, I'm discovering the part that's already like that. People debate that. But the idea is you're trying to tap into, that core part of yourself, right? That deeper, truthful, authentic, you know, enlightened or potentially enlightened part of who you are. So that's kind of the generation stage. Sometimes they use these fancy name for it called deity yoga, right? Where you tap into yourself. That's sort of the divine core of who you are, right?
Yeah.
And you learn how to do those meditations. So that's one part of it.
Yeah.
And we'll give sort of exercises for people to work on that, right? And a lot of the times, these are things that do have initiations and all these fancy aspects, but we're going to do it in a way that's accessible for people,
Yeah.
right? To make it real for your life. I remember the first time I did one of these things, it was with a teacher from Bhutan, and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I was just like, okay, cool, I'm here, I'll do it. But our
Yeah.
goal is to do this in a way, since we're all going to be taking the attitude specifically, we're not just be going through some ritual from Asia or something. We'll try to do it in a way that makes it real
Yeah.
and accessible to people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can always delve into more of this, once you get your toes in the water, you decide that the water feels good to you. There's other things you can do, but we're really trying to set you up for something that you could work on for years and years of your life. So you have something that you'll leave
Yes.
with, right?
Yes.
Um, and then the other part is usually they call completion stage. So we're going to do a little bit of both of this, right?
Hmm.
And that's where you learn how to meditate on the more subtle energetic parts of who you are, right? So in the Tibetan Buddhist world, they talk about this thing called the Vajra body, fancy term, but what really is about is like the subtle energies of the system, right?
Yeah.
And you specifically go through and you try to visualize the subtle energy channels and the subtle energies that make it up. It's like kind of a layer of who you are again, right? So it's a kind
Yeah.
of an exploration of like, who am I? And then the idea is as you start to like play with these things, it kind of like definitely has a deep effect on like the status of your mind, right?
Sure.
So that can be psychologically true. You can get insights into who you are as a psychological person. Sometimes that's healing from something that were painful events in your life. You realize, okay, I'm transforming those things. Sometimes it's tapping into like we're doing the tantras. So deeper feelings of like bliss and joy is one of the goals in the tantras, right?
Yeah.
And when you tap into those deeper blisses and joys, that's one of the most transformative things you can do. You can go,
Yeah.
wow, I have this power, this core in me that's happy and joyful and blissful even, right?
Yeah.
And I can carry that out into my life too. And you do that by learning how to do some of the energy-based meditations, right? Where you kind of
Mm.
visualize these channels within yourself and you try to imagine how they flow. And yeah, that's a deep thing. And to me, I think, one of the discoveries when I first started doing these things was of joy and bliss, and you can
Mm.
find that like inside yourself. So I don't know how you think about it, Daniel, but life can be hard. If we look back on 2023 for both of us, was this an easy year for us? I would have to say no.
I mean, 2023 was last year, so
Oh, I meant 2024. See, I'm just trying to forget this whole year.
yeah,
This year was a shit show.
yeah.
I could just forget the whole thing. I was trying to go back in time to 2023. Let's pick up there.
I'll take that one for sure.
In any case, when you get to the joy part of the tantras, to me, I think there's something about being able to find that inside yourself. And then whatever crap show life brings, or positives,
Yeah,
or whatever it is, you still have this core of like, no, I have this thing inside of me, my own
yeah,
sense of my own my who I am, my own spirit, my own joy. That's a powerful thing to find, I think.
yeah. So that's like a place of empowerment, right?
Yeah.
And I think that the other part that we are wanting to intentionally cultivate is that of, you mentioned it, I use a different word, like you mentioned bliss, but I could say maybe on a, at least from my brain, a more tangible thing is pleasure, right?
Hmm.
These practices should be pleasurable. They can be done independently, but they can totally be done with a partner. But either way, the one of the goals is to cultivate a pleasureful state. Because yes, it does take discipline to do meditation and or whatever your practice is, but but discipline alone is not going to get this thing done. You have to have your own deep intrinsic motivational force, and you should enjoy it. You should enjoy what you're doing. And the more that you enjoy it, the more that you're going to go back to it. And more importantly, the more that you enjoy something, therefore the more that you do it, the more that those things have an influence on you, the more that they change you, the more that you allow yourself to be sort of bathed in these kind of positive emotional, positive psycho-emotional states. And it is kind of like it really is an antidote to the angst and frustration and difficulties of everyday life. So to have these practices as a tool and as something that they can get deeper and deeper, like you said, Eric, then it becomes, not just a shield, but an opportunity to kind of transform, right? An opportunity to live in the middle of this like discomforting 2024, I mean 23, I mean whatever area we are in,
Yeah.
but you can do it. You do it with pleasure. And the pleasures, more importantly and more specifically, are not you are not reliant on external mediators to give you something, because then that thing can run out and then you will inherently be attached to that particular thing, and then you'll chase, and then you're just running around in circles. These practices, if done deeply enough and with enough, practice, I guess I could say, do give you those states that are very, very, very difficult to cultivate without them. Very difficult. And if you do, they're few and far in between.
Yeah, I think it was like the purposeful thing, which I think is an influence on both of our spiritual lives, but to choose the meditative practices that tap into these feelings of pleasure or bliss or joy or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
right? Because then
Yeah.
if you build it inside of yourself, it is an antidote. It also acts as a kind of its own natural shield to the
Yeah.
ups and downs of the world because you can find that place in yourself.
Yes.
And then I think part of the mystery of everything in this is like, if you can find those places in yourself, you start to realize, oh, that is who I am. That deeper, more blissful, joyful being is actually who I am,
Yeah.
right? And that can be a cure to a whole bunch of other negative things, but also like taps you into the deeper part of life,
Yeah.
right? And I think that what we'll be doing things like what you were saying, things that you can take out and share with a partner, if you want to do that. But there's also a part of that that's good just to build up for yourself,
Yeah.
within yourself,
Yeah.
right? Because then you can share that with another person, you know, romantic partner, sexual partner. That's all good. But you also have the ability to like tap into those feelings, those energies in your own being, independent of anything else. Now it's yours that you own for yourself,
Correct.
and you can share it, but it's also the thing that becomes, yeah, you're discovering the core of who you are and also finding the ability to generate those kinds of things. It's its own natural inner happy space.
It also,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and sharing it, you are like, when you realize, and I'll just speak out loud so I can hear it from my own stupid brain. when you realize that you're always sharing what it is that you know and who you are with everybody, then why would you not want to share things that are beneficial? You know, why would you not want to share things that are not necessarily exclusively positive, but things that have meaning? You know,
Yeah.
it just I don't know. It makes sense to me.
Well, you could be sharing with like family,
Yeah,
friends, partners, kids,
yeah,
so on. You could be sharing anyways. You might as well share the good stuff.
yeah,
In order to share the best stuff, you have to cultivate it in yourself to be able to do that.
yeah,
And you'll have more of that stuff to share. And then, in the end, maybe like, like I go back to the very beginning of like this for me a little bit, I wanted to change things in myself. I wanted to change things in my life. I had motivations to do that.
yeah.
One of the best things to do is to engage in something that tries to help you do that in a way that's joyful and blissful. I think that's Jin and Tantra.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm good with it if you're good with it.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. So we have, so this retreat is coming up, as Eric said. It's March 5th to March 9th in in 2025. It's going to happen here in the Midwest. And the details are I'll post the link to the details. We do have a few spots remaining. If people are interested, hit us up at jinandtantra@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment in the YouTube, and I'll get back to you. You could also hit us up on Instagram, the Jin and Tantra podcast. If it does sell out, which I think that it's going to, we're about halfway filled right now, and that's before we record this and before we make a significant push. Um, Understand that this is something that we would like to do on a regular basis. I mean, for me, I'd like to do this a couple times a year. That
Yeah,
would
I'm
be
totally cool with that
that
too.
would
I
be
think we
great.
always have had the goal of like wanting to help people what we feel like we got out of this, which is the ability to
Yes.
transform who you are. And that's what we want to share.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like the more we
So
can do it, better. Yeah.
yeah, so if this one sells out and people are interested, I'll put you on the wait list, and when and if we have enough people, we'll run it again later in the year. And it's also nice. I mean, and look, and even people who are going to come on this one for sure are going to come again, because once you start to do this process, you realize it's going to take a couple iterations for you to go through and really learn it, and then you go home and practice it, and then you can come back with something that you can really bring to it, because now again you have the time to practice, and the time to ask questions, and the time to really dive deep, and that's just such a great opportunity. I mean, I'm happy to be able to do this.
Yeah, like I had, repeated versions of the same retreat. I mean, that was Zen was always a repeated version of the same retreat. But each time you can go deeper and learn more and carry more things out, and the experiences you have in between are the
Yeah,
things that will build for the next round, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
totally.
Hmm.
So Eric and I mean, Eric's been doing this longer than I have. I mean, I've been on many retreats. Eric's been on many retreats. And it's always worthwhile, even the ones that are difficult. Those ones are probably even more worthwhile, to be honest, because you get something out of them that is just deeper than what occurs in the moment. And so you never know what's going to come out. But this is, it's an alchemical practice for sure, and one that we are happy to present. We are happy to be presenting the Diamond Path Tantric Retreat 2025. And so for those who are interested, email Gin and Tantra at Gmail, YouTube, hit us up, Instagram, Gin and Tantra podcast. And if you know us personally, please feel free to reach out, via text message, Facebook, phone call, messenger pigeon, whatever it is. But I'll leave the link to the brief description in this podcast here. And yeah, we look forward to getting going. We got some changes, a little bit of changes upcoming for next year, but good changes for the podcast. And I know Eric's excited to hear what they are.
Yeah, I'm as much like in suspense as anybody.
Yeah, that's right. Anyways, I think this is probably going to come out near the holiday season. So happy holidays to everybody. We'll be back, probably in a week or two with some episodes back with our normal regularity, and probably some even increased. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from anybody and everybody. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sharing our work. For Eric, this is Daniel. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.